Hello, this is the first lecture in the seventh chapter of George Joule, which is about grammar. Now, this chapter focuses on grammar and its various meanings. More specifically, it deals with the traditional grammar, introducing different parts of speech, the notions of agreement and grammatical gender. It is concerned with the prescriptive approach and its shortcomings, and still another section is concerned with the descriptive grammar and the means used to describe actual language use, structural analysis and constituent analysis. The chapter also covers the grammatical functions phrases can have and briefly touches upon word order and language typology, which is fully tackled in the next chapter, which is the chapter on syntax. Well, starting with the introductory remarks, we will talk about different things in this lengthy chapter. I should say that we'll tackle it in 3 lectures because it is longer than other chapters. While starting with the levels of grammar, as you remember in the first lecture, I told you that grammar can be morphology plus phonology, or it can be morphology, phonology, and syntax. Well, here, according to George Joule, it seems that grammar is composed of 2 sub branches of linguistics, which, as we can see here, the phonological level, grammar, the rules of phonology or grammar of phonology, and the grammar of morphology. And we have already defined the phonological rules as well as the morphological rules. The phonological rules constituting the rules of the sound patterns of a given language, specific language, and the morphological rules are the structure of words of a specific language. Now, here is an example which is analyzed on 2 levels: the phonological level and the morphological level. Of course, the phrase is the lucky boys. The lucky boys. This is the phonological transcription, the analysis of the phonemes, and here the morphological transcription and the analysis of morphemes that constitute this phrase. Okay, so these 2 levels, the level of phonology, phonological rules, and the level of morphology or morphological rules, constitute what is called the grammar of a language. And here, since we have the English exemplification, then we can say the grammar of English, at least. Now, according to these 2 levels, which is the level of morphology and the level of phonology, we could have the only phrase, which is the lucky boys. We cannot have boys the lucky or lucky boys the. Okay, why? Because these 2 phrases are regarded as ingrammatical or ungrammatical, ill-formed, okay, and we can put this asterisk, this one, like this one and this one, when we have the sentence which is unacceptable or ungrammatical. Why unacceptable or ungrammatical? Because there are certain constructions which are apparently ungrammatical, but if we take them back to their original context, we will find them grammatical. However, these the apparently ungrammatical constructions are sometimes acceptable. So we take for granted the acceptable and grammatical constructions to be used or to be well formed, and the unacceptable or ungrammatical are ill formed, putting asterisk here, like this one, this sign. Now, English has strict rules for combining words into phrases, of course. English, Arabic, French, Portuguese, Persian, and whatsoever language we do have has its own word order. Here we may talk about phrases. We may talk about phrases from the viewpoint of making of word order. Otherwise, it is fully tackled in the next chapter on syntax. So, if we take these three parts of speech, boys, they're lucky. Now, here we have this order, the only one order which is acceptable and grammatical, which is article, the, adjective, lucky, and noun, boys. We cannot say noun, article, adjective, or adjective, noun, article. This is not acceptable or ungrammatical in the English language. It could be grammatical and or acceptable in the other languages, but it is not in English. So, what is grammar? How can we define grammar? I can remember that I've defined grammar in the second or the first chapter when we talked about what is the chapter of what is linguistics. We said that grammar is so and so and so, and I made you repeat it after me. So grammar could have different definitions. However, it is a set of rules. Simply speaking, a set of rules. Now, what type of set of rules? Why do we use this set of rules, and when can we use it? Okay, this is the issue. So the process of describing structure of phrases and sentences in such a way that we account for all the grammatical sequences in a language and rule out all the ungrammatical sequences is called grammar. Now here, according to George Joule, grammar is defined as a process of finding what is grammatical and what is ungrammatical. Okay, it is the process. Okay, a process of finding out what's grammatical and what is ungrammatical. So simply speaking, it is a process, or we can say a set of rules according to which we can find what is grammatical and what is ungrammatical in any given language. Okay, according to these rules, we can say that the lucky boys is a grammatical phrase, well grammatically formed, and the phrase boys lucky there is ungrammatical. Why? Because it doesn't follow the word order of the English language. So here is one reflection or one definition of the term grammar. Otherwise, there are different definitions to this term grammar. grammar could be a school. Grammar could be a school. Now we just defined grammar as a set of rules or a process to find out what is grammatical and what is ungrammatical. So according to this concept, there are different schools dealing with linguistics in general. One of them is called traditional grammar. One of these rules, one of these reflections or types of grammar is called a traditional grammar. Of course, it is a kind of school dealing with grammar, with language in general, but taking it, taking the language from a grammatical point of view, from what is correct and what is incorrect, what is grammatically correct and what is grammatically incorrect or ungrammatical. Now, this school, of course, we talked about this in the previous in the first or second lectures in the beginning of the first course. However, it's okay if we repeat them quickly. Traditional grammar, as we said, is based on what is grammatical and what is ungrammatical. It takes the Greek and Latin languages as the base languages that all languages should follow, which is of course wrong idea. Because these two languages at that time are the languages of scholarships, of religion, philosophy, knowledge, and so on and so forth. I've called them the languages, the passion languages, or the lingua franca of the world at that time. So, grammar of these two languages, as I said, are the model for all other languages. In other words, other languages must follow the grammar of these two languages. Why? Because they are the most eminent languages, they are the international languages, or they are the lingua franca at that time. Just like the English nowadays. Most of the languages in the world are trying to follow or to take the lead, to follow the lead of English in terms of translation, making new words, getting new words, borrowing from English new words, and so on and so forth. So this is the issue of the Latin and Greek. Now, the best known terms that the traditional are those used in describing the parts of a speech. Now, it is clearly, the influence of the Greek and Latin languages is clearly manifested, is clearly found in describing the parts of speech. When describing the parts of speech, for example, of the English language, the grammarians at that time must follow the way how the Latin and the Greek languages describe their own parts of speech, which is again a wrong idea. Because each language has its own peculiarities and specifics. So the parts of speech, for example, of the English language, of the this sentence, the lucky boys found a backpack. Okay, they are described as the article, lucky adjective, boys noun, found verb, again article, where backpack noun. Okay, in the park, so in preposition the article were park noun, and they opened it carefully, and conjunction they pronoun opened, verb it, pronoun, and carefully adverb. So these are the parts of speech according of course to the Latin and Greek languages are found in the English language. They follow the Latin and the English language. So the noun, of course, is symbolized as n, articles, art, adjective, and you can find all of these symbols of the parts of speech. Some parts of speech are well described, other are not. New parts of speech are borrowed from, or are introduced, I should say, introduced from different grammarians and so on and so forth. Another term for the parts of speech is introduced, which is the word class instead of parts of speech, and so on and so forth. Now, according to traditional grammar, again, there is a kind of agreement between the subject and the verb, the subject and the object, the verb and the object, and these parts of, or the elements of any given sentence or any given phrase. Now, the traditional grammar introduces the agreement in number, in person, in tense, in voice, and in gender, and in different aspects. All of these aspects, of course, follow the Latin or Greek grammar. Why? Because, as we said, they are the lingua franca at that time. Now, in terms of number, of course, if we say he, okay, then the subject must be one. If we say they, then the subject must be two. If we say I have different books, then the S is the representation of the plural, which is more than one book, and so on and so forth. If I say they are or they bring it themselves, I cannot say himself. Why? Because they there must be a kind of agreement between the subject and the reflexive object pronoun. The person, again, the first, second, third person. The tense, of course, there must be. All of these are introduced in the book of syntax in the second and the third year. You can find them in your books or references of syntax. For example, we can say Kathy loves her dog. Now, Kathy is a female. Then there must be agreement with the pronoun of the object, which is her. Okay, her. Then, since the subject is of the third person singular, then the verb must take the S of the third person. So we can say the number, the person, and the object agreement in this sentence. In this sentence, three types of agreement. The different forms of English pronouns can be described, of course, in terms of person and number. We use I, first person, you, second person, she, he, it, third person singular. These are very important, and I'm sure that you have taken them somewhere in the previous stages. So, in the sentence, Kathy loves her dog, we have a noun, Kathy, which is, of course, third person singular, and we use the verb loves, not love. Why? Because the third person singular necessitates that the verb takes the S of the third person in order to agree with it. So back to the tense, of course, loves, the present tense, not past tense. Why? Because we use the present tense to tell facts, and there must be some kind of agreement. Voice, active or passive. Active for certain uses, passive for certain uses. Gender, Kathy and her. We did not say Kathy and his. Why? Because Kathy represents a female, so we must put her instead of his. Okay. We have the grammatical gender. I think we've talked enough for this lecture. Let's keep it the grammatical gender for the next lecture. Next lecture we'll go on with the grammatical gender and then and continue. That's all for this lecture. Thank you very much. Next time we'll continue with the next part or the second part of this chapter.